welcome. Another video around forms. There's a lot of sections on forms that provide valuable intelligence or ability to make customizations, customize your form views, etc. So this one's primarily going to focus on the data tab. And if we go in and take a look at the form, the data tab, the only place I'm using it is really in this third field. In the first two fields, there is data that is pre-populated for me. This is just a drop-down list. So if I come in and take a look and go to data, you'll notice that it's just sourced from values. In this case, I entered the values manually. You'll note that it has two fields, the label and then the value. So the label is what will actually show to the user. The value is what would be retrieved behind the scenes, right? So in this case, we have the apple, orange, and banana, and it's just a static kind of drop-down list. These can also be populated from returned results from API calls, things like that. So for example, you could put a select drop-down in place and populate that drop-down with a return from an API call. Maybe you want to present the user with a list of safes, and the first thing you do is make an API call out to the safes endpoint. It returns a list. You could populate the dropdown with that list if you like, but in this case, it's just hard-coded. The cool thing about the data field is you can also do or manipulate the data based on previous selections. So in this case, it's just a no default value. However, I am calculating a value using JavaScript based on the previous selections. So there's two ways you could really handle this. In this case, I'm using this data tab in order to calculate this video or this value. If you remember in a previous video, I used some logic and then I performed a schema update, not a schema update, a value update based on that logic to update the field. So they both kind of work similarly, but in this case, it's a little bit cleaner and easier to tell what's going on. So if you have kind of a set schema that you want to break down, you could put it right in here. You do your decisions. In this case, it's just a couple of switches in JavaScript. And then based on that, the value is set to something. It may be better to do it with the advanced logic if you want to kind of have these decisions and switches much more customized, or if it's not as simple as two just drop downs, right? If you need to make the value very unique depending on a wide range of decisions, the logic choice may be a better option. And to do that, you would come into logic, you would add the logic, give it a name, choose the trigger, and maybe the trigger is some sort of JavaScript where you're looking at two different fields, and then choosing your action, you would give it example value update. You would choose the type value, and then you would set value equals something, right, based on this custom trigger. And of course you can have many custom triggers, so depending on how you want to do it, you could either do it this way or you can do it with the data tab here. But before we leave here, let me cancel these out. I don't want to actually save them, and we'll kind of go back and look. So this scenario, we're just basically calculating the value based on the previous two choices using some JavaScript switches. So I'll go ahead and cancel this out, and I'll save it and then run this. Maybe I'm clicking too fast here. So I run it, and the first thing you see is in our switches, we have some defaults, right? So the default is, for the first field here, is just fruit. And the second part is you need to choose a color. So if I come in and I choose orange, and then I choose yellow, it automatically updates the calculated data to say small orange is neutron yellow, right? I have this little placeholder that said this field is auto-calculated based on previous selections, and we can make it so that our end user can't type over it. Now, in this case, I'm trying to add to it, but it keeps getting auto-corrected. We could also make it so that it can't be written to in that same data page. But as I change this, it automatically gets updated, which is one benefit of doing it this way. So this is kind of a cool, unique feature where maybe you have a user making a bunch of choices, and then at the end, you kind of have a summary of their choices and show them what is actually going to happen. this is the perfect example of where you would put that in play. So if there aren't any questions, or if there are any questions, send them my way, but this is how you can use that data page or tab to kind of automatically update data. Note that it's going to be different depending on the type of form field, right? So not every form field is created equal. So in the scenario where you choose like number, for example, your options on the data tab are going to be a little bit different. One thing I would do is definitely choose to redraw on any change. So this is going to automatically update it based on any change within the form, but the fields that you see up top are a little bit different. Again, there's some pretty good tooltips on most of these things that give you a good bit of information to look at or to help you identify what's going on. And if you do have questions, there's a lot of great information on form.io, which is where we source this form component from.